Ever scroll through endless online shopping carts, adding things you might need, and then wonder what happens to all the stuff that they talked?
Oh, yeah.
Prepare for a peek behind that curtain and, well, into a whole lot more on today's Deep Dive.
Welcome. Our exploration today draws in the May 20'25 edition of Consumers 360 News Commentary.
Right, which you can find on consumers.app.
Exactly. That's the news aggregator podcast from Consumers Research, where they kind of pull together all the latest consumer-focused discussions.
Yeah, think of consumers.app as our shortcut to staying in the loop and our mission today.
Well, we're going to sift through these headlines, try and pull out the insights that are most relevant and maybe a little surprising for you.
Sounds good. So where do we kick things off? Let's dive into something that's, everywhere these days. Sustainability.
Okay, our first point, it comes from Inc.com. The headline was, Sustainability has a storytelling problem.
Storytelling. Interesting angle.
It is. And it immediately makes you think, what does sustainability even mean, really? Consumers Research breaks it down into three main parts: environmental, economic, and social.
Okay. Environmental, economic, social seems straightforward enough on the surface, but why is it so, hard to actually measure how we're doing?
That's the core of the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sustainability is it's complex. It's always changing.
Right.
We don't have one single agreed upon definition, or like a standard set of metrics everyone uses.
No universal ruler.
Pretty much. Think about all the different standard certifications, reporting systems. They're all trying to measure progress.
Yeah.
But because there's no single framework everyone agrees on globally, it's really tough to compare efforts between countries.
I can see that.
And it makes developing joined-up international policies much harder. Plus, this lack of standardization, it kind of leaves the door open for, greenwashing.
Right. Where companies might just highlight the good stuff.
Exactly. Pick and choose the metrics that make them look good. So for you, the listener, it means you've got to be pretty sharp about sustainability claims. Look for consistency, transparency.
Good advice. It's definitely easy to say you're sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay, another term we hear a lot is decoupling. What's that about?
Decoupling. Yeah, the big idea is separating economic growth from environmental harm.
So make more money, use fewer resources.
That's the goal. Expand the economy while hopefully shrinking the environmental footprint.
And how's that working out in reality?
Well, current analysis suggests it's not really happening fast enough or at the scale we need globally.
Okay.
Which really just highlights how urgently we need, stronger policies from governments and some real breakthroughs in technology to make it happen.
Right. Hoping isn't enough. We need action. Now, that headline mentioned a storytelling problem. Why focus on stories when we're talking about data and science?
That's such a crucial point. Storytelling is how you make this stuff relatable. It takes abstract data, numbers on a page, and turns them into something that connects with people on a human level. Statistics become narratives.
Makes sense.
The challenge is we often don't have those really clear, compelling stories that show how, say, my actions link up to the bigger sustainability picture.
Yeah, how does my recycling bin connect to global goals?
Exactly. Without those narratives, it's hard to build that broad public understanding, that support you need for the big changes that are often necessary.
People need to see their role, their part in the story. Okay, speaking of data, Consumers Research also looked at technology's role, right? Like AI and the Internet of Things.
Yes. And what's quite exciting there is AI's potential. It could help optimize how we use resources, boost energy efficiency,
right?
Even help create totally new sustainable business models. AI can chew through massive data sets to track metrics, predict impacts. A 2022 survey actually highlighted these trends.
But there's a catch.
Well, yeah. We also need to be careful about the energy these powerful AI models use themselves. We need to make sure AI development itself is sustainable.
Good point. The solution can't become part of the problem. And IoT, the Internet of Things, how does that fit in?
IoT provides the plumbing, really. It lets organizations track and optimize resource use in real time.
Like sensors everywhere?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Connected devices gather data on energy use, waste, you name it. Companies can then use that data to make smarter decisions, reduce their footprint. There was a 2016 study looking into how this ICT stuff supports sustainability practices.
So data streams helping businesses be greener. Now, energy and climate change, obviously huge here. What did the techno-economic analysis show?
That analysis from a 2024 study really hammered home how deeply connected energy, climate change, and sustainable development are.
It's all linked.
Totally. Rising temperatures, extreme weather, they directly mess with our energy systems. So when we're looking at new energy projects, we have to weigh up both the economics and the environmental side.
And what kind of projects look promising?
Interestingly, the research suggested that smaller scale renewable projects, like, say, local wind farms, can often be more efficient and adaptable.
Okay.
But you still need to carefully look at the social side, the community impacts. It's not just about the tech.
Smaller, adaptable, but consider the people.
Got it. And looping back to storytelling, can newer tech like augmented reality or generative AI help tell these sustainability stories better?
This is where it could get really cool. Think about AR and generative AI creating immersive, interactive experiences.
Like what?
Well, a 2025 study looked at this. Imagine using AR on your phone to see what rising sea levels might look like in your own neighborhood.
Whoa. Okay, that's powerful.
Right. It makes complex issues way more accessible, more tangible. It could potentially build that understanding and support we were talking about much more effectively than just charts and graphs.
Definitely paints a picture. Okay, let's shift gears slightly, but stay within sustainability. Our next headline, this one's from Tech Radar. Sustainability through simplification, the future of product design. Seems logical, but what's the core idea? It's pretty intuitive, actually. The basic idea is simplify the product. Use fewer different materials, fewer parts, make the manufacturing cleaner.
And that helps out.
Well, it cuts down on energy use and waste across the whole product life cycle, from making it to using it to getting rid of it.
Makes sense.
It lowers the environmental impact, plus it often makes products easier to recycle or reuse later, which means we rely less on digging up new resources.
Healthier planet.
Less complex equals less waste. Simple enough. Now, the EU seems to be pushing this hard with some kind of regulation.
Yeah, the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation, it's a pretty big deal.
What does it do?
It basically forces manufacturers to think about energy efficiency, durability, repairability, recyclability right from the very start, the design phase.
So cradle to grave thinking.
Exactly. Life cycle thinking. Companies have to consider the impact all the way through, and we're seeing them respond looking at greener materials, modular designs, so things are easier to fix.
Using digital tools, too, right? Using digital tools to track and improve their sustainability performance is pushing the industry.
So designing for the whole life, not just the sale, could something like machine learning help designers here?
Interesting question. A 2021 study actually looked into that. Machine learning could potentially analyze, say, thousands of online product reviews.
To find out what?
To figure out what features customers value, but also where they see sustainability problems, like maybe something breaks too easily or isn't recyclable.
Mining customer feedback.
Precisely. The challenges are, getting good data and making sure the AI correctly understands what people mean, especially with subtle things like sustainability.
True.
But the potential's there. It could help automate finding those good ideas for more sustainable designs, drive some real innovation, like finding sustainable gold in customer comments.
Clever. And speaking of reviews, how else do they help make products greener?
Well, recent research suggests they're a goldmine of real-world data. How durable is this thing, really? What's its environmental impact over time?
Stuff you don't get from lab tests.
Exactly. Designers can use this feedback to spot specific concerns, maybe prioritize adding more eco-friendly features next time, or see how they stack up against greener alternatives.
So it's a feedback loop. Consumers guide better design.
That's the idea, the collective voice nudging things in a more sustainable direction. Now, how does all this focus on product design link up with those bigger global sustainability goals?
Yeah, the UN goals and things like that.
Right. Sustainable product design is like a fundamental building block for those broader objectives.
Oh, so.
Well, think about it. Better design means less need for raw materials, less waste going to landfill, better protection for health and ecosystems. It directly supports goals like responsible consumption and production.
And helps build a circular economy.
Absolutely. Keeps materials in use for longer. It's all interconnected. Even software design plays a part, doesn't it? Consumers research mentioned software sustainability.
Yeah, that came up. Tell me about that.
Well, there was a 2022 case study looking at Nigeria's pension industry, actually. It found that even though awareness about software sustainability might be low in some developing countries,
right,
if you do implement it well, it can really boost efficiency and improve service delivery. The main issue is often just a lack of knowledge, no clear guidelines.
So raising awareness is key.
Exactly. Promote awareness, provide frameworks, and you can help build more sustainable digital practices. Design better digital products everywhere. It's about making the digital world greener too.
Making the infrastructure itself more sound. And finally, on design, how important is that initial design stage for a product's carbon footprint?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. Study after study, life cycle assessments, they all show the same thing. Decisions made right at the start, in the design phase, have the biggest impact.
Really? More than manufacturing or transport?
Often, yes. Choosing low-impact materials, designing for energy-efficient manufacturing, making sure it's easy to take apart and recycle later, that locks in huge emissions savings from day one. These early choices aren't just better for the planet, they often end up being more cost-effective in the long run, too.
Makes you think about the hidden decisions in everything we buy. Okay, third sustainability headline, but this one's interesting. From the Straits Times, the booming business of returned products in the U.S. That doesn't sound very sustainable initially.
Right. It seems like a contradiction. Returns overstock sounds like waste.
Yeah.
But the headline points to a lot of innovation in how retailers are actually managing this stuff. It's an unavoidable part of business, especially online.
So what are they doing differently?
We're seeing things like subscription-based inventory planning, especially in e-grocery, using fancy predictive modeling to get better at forecasting demand.
Trying to guess what we'll buy.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Using data mining, looking at time patterns to anticipate needs better. This minimizes both overstock and running out of things, which helps manage returns more efficiently.
Okay. And easier returns too.
Definitely. More omni-channel try and return options. They want to make it smooth for the customer, but also streamline the process on their end.
So getting smarter about predicting and handling returns, how did we get here? How did history shape this?
Well, retail has changed massively, right? From little local shops to these huge global online players.
Sure.
Historically, the focus was just having stuff available, service. Now, with e-commerce booming, they've needed super complex logistics, real-time tracking, much more flexible return policies.
To keep customers happy online.
Exactly. And that whole history led us to today's integrated online physical returns and these dynamic inventory systems.
It's been a constant evolution now. All these return items, it must cost retailers a fortune.
It does. But being able to efficiently recirculate returned or overstocked goods is actually becoming a big deal for them.
How so? Recirculate?
Yeah, it's a chance to get some value back from stuff that might otherwise be a total loss. Minimize waste, maximize profit.
So reselling it, refurbishing.
All of the above. Or even shifting it to fill inventory gaps somewhere else. It keeps revenue flowing, especially if new orders slow down. And it feeds into that circular economy idea in retail, too.
So turning a problem into an opportunity, maybe. What about those subscription inventory models? Yeah. Pros and cons.
The big pro is potentially much better demand forecasting. Less overstock costs, maybe happier, more loyal customers because stuff is reliably there.
Sounds good.
But the challenges are real. Demand, especially for fresh stuff like groceries, can be unpredictable. Finding the right balance between offering enough variety in the subscription and staying profitable.
Tricky.
Very. It needs really sophisticated data analytics, a deep understanding of what customers actually do.
A balancing act. And the try and return options, how do they affect us, the shoppers, and the retailers' bottom line?
Well, interestingly, making it easy to try stuff risk-free can actually make you more likely to buy it in the first place.
Huh.
Yeah. And for things where fit is uncertain clothes, shoes online, these strategies can actually boost profits by encouraging those initial might as well try it purchases.
Okay.
Store staff play a big role, too, in making returns smooth. But what's maybe surprising is that research suggests offering free return shipping doesn't actually change return rates or profits that much.
That is surprising. I'd assume free returns means more returns.
Apparently not significantly. It seems like whether the product actually fits or meets your needs and how convenient the whole process is matters more.
Fascinating. Now, technology, again, predictive modeling, data mining, how is that changing the game for handling returns?
Oh, it's huge. Recent research shows these techniques like association rule mining.
What's that? Like spotting patterns?
Exactly. Like a store noticing people who buy coffee often buy cream, finding hidden links and buying data. That plus time series forecasting, looking at past data to predict the future, is revolutionizing inventory management. By analyzing huge data sets, retailers can spot subtle patterns, forecast sales better, manage stock levels much more effectively.
So less guesswork.
Way less. Align stock with demand, cut down waste from overstock, reduce losses from returns. It's all about using data for smarter inventory.
making the system more efficient, less wasteful. And tying this back to sustainability, how does all this retail innovation around returns help the planet?
Well, it plays a really important role by encouraging recirculation and resale.
Keeping stuff out of landfill.
Exactly. Reducing waste, lessening the impact of making new things. When retailers integrate tech with sustainable models like offering refills or easy return from home pickups, they lower their carbon footprint.
And encourage us to be more responsible consumers.
That's part of it, too. It makes the whole reverse logistics process, getting stuff back, as efficient and green as possible.
Closing the loop, making returns part of a cycle. Okay, complete pivot now. Let's talk personal finance, specifically inherited IRAs. The LA Times on MSN.com had a piece, The Lowdown on Inherited IRAs. What are the big changes we need to know about, especially after the Secure Act?
Right. The Secure Act from late 2019, big changes. The main one, it basically got rid of the stretch IRA for most people who aren't the spouse of the deceased.
The stretch IRA, that was where you could take money out over your whole lifetime.
Exactly. Spread out the withdrawals, minimize the tax hit each year. Now, for most non-spouse beneficiaries, you have to take out the entire balance within 10 years of the original owner's death.
Wow, 10 years? That's much faster.
Much faster. It really accelerates those taxable distributions, can mean a much bigger tax bill in a shorter time.
Are there exceptions?
Yes, important ones. Spouses, minor children, people with disabilities or chronic illnesses, and beneficiaries who aren't more than 10 years younger than the person who died, they might still be able to stretch.
Okay, so that gradual withdrawal is mostly gone. How do RMD's required minimum distributions work now under this 10-year rule?
Generally, for those non-spouses under the 10-year rule, there aren't specific annual RMDs during the 10 years.
Oh.
But, and this is the key part, the entire account has to be empty by the end of year 10. So no small annual requirement, but one big deadline.
That deadline looms.
Exactly. Whereas those eligible designated beneficiaries, the spouses, minor children, etc., they can still potentially stretch distributions over their own life expectancy, often with annual RMDs.
So a much tighter timeline for most heirs. How does that faster payout affect the taxes they pay?
Well, because you're potentially taking out large amounts over just 10 years, you're much more likely to get bumped into higher income tax brackets.
Ouch.
Yeah. Since these distributions are taxed as ordinary income, that compressed time frame can really increase the effective tax rate you end up paying on the inheritance.
Could take a big bite. What about traditional versus Roth IRAs? How are they taxed differently for beneficiaries now?
Good question. For a traditional IRA, the beneficiary pays ordinary income tax on all the distributions, including those accelerated ones under the 10-year rule.
Okay.
For an inherited Roth IRA, the distributions are generally tax-free federally, as long as the original account was open for at least 5 years.
So Roth is still better tax-wise.
On the withdrawals themselves, yes. But the 10-year rule still applies to non-spouse beneficiaries. So even though the money comes out tax-free, you still have to take it all out within that decade.
So the tax benefit remains, but the clock is still ticking fast. Are there ways people can plan ahead to lessen the blow of the Secure Act?
Yes, proactive planning is key now. Financial planners often suggest the original IRA owner might consider doing Roth conversions during their lifetime.
To pay the tax now instead of the heirs paying later.
Essentially, yes. Reduce the future taxable amount for the heirs. Also, thinking very carefully about who you designate as beneficiaries is crucial. Who might qualify for those exceptions?
Right, the eligible ones.
And finally, certain kinds of trusts can sometimes be set up carefully to align with the 10-year rule while still offering some tax management control.
Sounds like professional advice is really needed here.
Definitely. Now, stepping back, what wider economic effects could this Secure Act have with faster withdrawals from retirement pots? Well, some scholarly analysis suggests it'll likely boost short-term tax revenues for the government. More money coming out sooner means more tax paid sooner.
Okay, makes sense.
But the flip side is it could actually reduce the overall tax efficiency for the beneficiaries in the long run. That income bunching into just 10 years can mean higher marginal rates.
Right.
And that shift might influence how people save, invest, and how wealth gets passed down through generations.
A short-term government gain, maybe a long-term individual challenge.
Yeah.
And those exceptions to the 10-year rule, how do they play into family tax planning?
They're really significant. Knowing who qualifies as an eligible designated beneficiary who can still stretch distributions opens up big opportunities for strategic planning within a family.
Like choosing the right heir for the right type of account.
Potentially, yes. It allows some families to optimize the tax outcome by letting certain heirs benefit from those longer payout timelines and possibly lower annual tax hits. Really highlights the need for personalized planning.
Definitely food for thought for anyone with an IRA. Okay, let's switch to something we all deal with, banking. Cleveland.com had an article busting 4 common banking myths. First up, how banks set interest rates. What's the myth?
The myth is basically that banks just pull rates out of thin air, maybe purely to maximize profits.
Yeah, it can feel like that sometimes.
Right. But consumers research points out it's way more complex. Central banks, like the Fed here, their policies have a huge influence.
The base rates they set.
Exactly. Plus broader economic conditions, the bank's own costs for getting funds. When the Fed moves its benchmark rate, that ripples through to the rates banks offer us.
And banks have costs too.
Absolutely. Operational costs, the risk involved in lending, what competitors are doing, it all gets factored in. It's more systematic than arbitrary, aimed at stability and profit in a competitive market.
Okay, less random than it seems. Now, we remember the rate hikes in 2022, and then that banking turbulence in 2023. How did that affect risk in the system?
Well, some recent research looked at credit default swaps, basically insurance against bank failure for U.S. and European banks.
Yeah.
It found that those rate hikes and the stress in 2023 did significantly increase systemic risk. It seemed to make banks within the same region more interconnected, more codependent.
So problems could spread easier.
Contagion?
Exactly. Contagion became more likely. And the study suggested both global factors and regional ones, especially stuff linked to the pandemic recovery, played a part.
So if one bank wobbles, others nearby feel it more. Okay, another myth. Do higher interest rates always mean less lending to small businesses?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But a study in Kenya actually found something different.
Oh, yeah. It found that interest rates didn't really have a significant effect on how much banks lent to SMEs, small and medium businesses.
What mattered more then?
Things like the bank's size and its liquidity, how much cash it had readily available. Those internal factors were more decisive than the general interest rate level.
Interesting. Good news for small businesses, maybe. Now, do rate changes hit everyone equally? Seems unlikely.
Yeah, research backs that up. A study looking at the housing market found that when rates go up, it's actually lower-income households who get hit disproportionately harder.
Really? Why?
The modeling suggested middle-class borrowers were relatively less affected. The study even hinted that maybe controlling things like housing construction might be better for stabilizing markets than just tweaking rates, because rate changes aren't fair across the board.
So broad rate hikes can actually make inequality worse. Okay, what about peer-to-peer lending? How do investors decide on rates there?
Well, a recent study showed investors on those P2P platforms look at perceived credit risk, the borrower's economic status, demographics.
Standard stuff.
Mostly. But there was a weird finding. Male borrowers with families were actually charged higher rates on average.
Higher? Why?
The researchers suggested maybe investors are using simplified models or even unconscious biases because they don't have the same rigorous checks a bank would do. Shows the need for transparency and education there.
Fascinating. Biases creeping in. Now, buy now, pay later. Super popular. What's the myth about interest rates?
The big one is that it's always interest-free, no strings attached, no risk.
Which isn't always true.
Increasingly, no. Research is showing a lot of people end up shifting that BNPL debt onto their regular credit cards.
Oh.
Yeah, and those cards often have rates around like 20%. So that interest-free purchase suddenly becomes really expensive long-term debt.
Sneaky.
It's raising concerns about financial literacy and whether we need more regulation in that BNPL space.
Definitely something to watch out for. Lastly, on banking myths, simple versus compound interest. Why does this difference matter so much?
Oh, it's fundamental.
Yeah.
It's how your money grows or how much debt costs you.
Yeah.
Simple interest is just calculated on the initial amount, the principal.
Okay.
Compound interest is calculated on the principal plus any interest that's already built up. Interest. Earning interest.
The snowball effect.
Exactly. Accounts earning compound interest grow way faster over time. Understanding this is vital for savings, investments, loans. It massively impacts your long-term finances. It's time working for you or against you.
Compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world, someone said. Okay, lots on finance. One last area, lifestyle and wellness. Indulge Express on MSN.com asked, how is Gen Z turning the beauty regime into a spiritual practice?
Intriguing.
It really is. It seems Gen Z views skincare as, well, more than just skin deep. How so? They're weaving in practices like positive affirmations, gratitude journaling, mindfulness, right into their routines.
While putting on moisturizer.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
The goal isn't just appearance, it's boosting emotional well-being, self-confidence. It's becoming a holistic self-care ritual for mental and spiritual health. And social media fuels this.
Big time.
Yeah.
Social media plays a huge role in shaping and sharing these trends.
So beauty from the inside out, literally. What's behind their push for cruelty-free, vegan, eco-friendly products?
It really seems to come down to their core values: ethics, sustainability,
Right?
a belief in respecting the planet, animals, plus real concerns about the environment and maybe the health impacts of synthetic ingredients. They're engaged in these issues, use social media for advocacy, support brands that match their values.
They vote with their wallets based on ethics. When they look for skincare info online, how do they do it? Is it targeted research?
Apparently not always. A 2023 study suggested Gen Z often just comes across skincare info online rather than actively hunting for it.
Stumble upon it.
Yeah. And how they process it is very social. They want to fit in with groups they admire. They interpret stuff collectively, really value what their peers say and experience.
So peer reviews and seeing what friends use is key.
Seems like it. This idea of information sensibility, a sort of socially tuned awareness of online info, is really central to their choices.
Interesting. How have microtrends in social media specifically shaped their routines lately?
Oh, platforms like TikTok, Instagram, they're basically setting the pace for Gen Z beauty trends now.
Fast trends.
Super fast. Rapid turnover of niche trends, lots of nostalgia, huge influence from influencers. These platforms spread new rituals really quickly, often blending that spiritual wellness aspect with beauty tips. It's very dynamic, very visual.
A constantly shifting landscape. Now, you mentioned concerns about synthetic ingredients. Is there science behind that?
There is. Scientific evidence does link some common synthetics, things like certain parabens, phthalates, some fragrances, to potential issues like skin irritation, allergies, even possibly endocrine disruption.
Hormonal effects?
Potentially, yes. And these findings definitely fuel that preference among Gen Z for vegan, organic, clean ingredients. They're seeking what they see as safer, more natural options.
Makes sense. Avoiding potential harm. How does this whole Gen Z approach to skincare fit into bigger shifts in how society sees health and wellness?
It really reflects that broader move towards holistic health, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This generation sees more aware of mental health, reports more allergies, prefers preventative self-care. So their skincare routines get tangled up with psychological well-being, ethical buying, wanting brands to be transparent. It's all connected.
Mental, physical, ethical, all in the skincare bottle. Lastly, consumers research mentioned spiritual intelligence in self-care. What's that about?
Yeah, so organizational studies look at spiritual intelligence, things like finding meaning, purpose, self-awareness, knowing your values.
Okay.
The idea is if you bring that into self-care, like a skincare routine, it could actually boost emotional well-being, maybe enhance self-esteem, encourage mindfulness during the routine, increase satisfaction with it. It aligns perfectly with Gen Z's holistic view. Inner and outer well-being are linked, making everyday routines more intentional, more meaningful.
Bringing purpose to the little things. Wow. Okay, that was an incredibly rich deep dive across so many consumer areas.
It really was. From the tangled web of sustainability and product returns, through IRA changes, banking myths, and right into how Gen Z is reshaping beauty rituals.
A huge thank you for taking this deep dive with us, exploring these fascinating insights from consumers.app and the great analysis from consumers research.
My pleasure.
And if you, our listener, found this valuable, please do like and subscribe at Consumers 360 for more discussions like this.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Given how personal values, even spirituality, are weaving into our buying habits, what others, maybe unexpected lives, might start getting infused with deeper meaning and intention in the coming years?